Linda arrives at her workplace Preston Strategic Solutions, where she works as a manager in the strategic planning division, and her coworker Donovan asks about the company report and she hands it over, explaining that she made sure all the indexes matched next year's estimated quarterly figures, and he tells her she is amazing. And as she follows him toward the meeting room, he casually says it is only a small meeting and reassures her everyone will know she did all the work, and she then notices Donovan heading into the meeting room and presenting the entire report to the board members as if he did it all himself. Later that day, Linda talks to her pet parrot Sweetie about what happened at work and says she is finally going to get promoted to vice president, especially now that her old boss has passed away and his son Bradley is about to take over as president. And she reminds Sweetie that Bradley flirted with her at the Christmas party last year and excitedly says that once she gets the promotion they are going to move into a bigger apartment. The next day, Bradley is officially introduced as the new president and Linda approaches him and introduces herself, reminding him they met at the Christmas party, and he simply nods, and she apologizes for his father's passing, but Bradley barely listens and is distracted by a small piece of food under her lip, and after a moment he excuses himself. And while the executive officer Franklin is explaining a merger situation, Bradley notices food on his hand transferred from Linda and asks Franklin to smell it, and Franklin reluctantly does and says tuna fish, and Bradley mutters that she is disgusting, and Franklin tells him his father had promised Linda a promotion to vice president, but Bradley says the job is going to Donovan. And Franklin argues that Linda is a real workhorse his father depended on for everything, but Bradley refuses to change his decision and even suggests moving her far away because she makes him sick, and Franklin mentions the Bangkok merger deal still has unresolved issues in Appendix D and that Donovan cannot handle it alone, and Bradley sighs and says they will use Linda to help Donovan get up to speed and then ship her out. Later, Linda notices Donovan and Bradley laughing together, and River tells her it is because Donovan is being promoted to vice president and the two were in the same fraternity in college and still play golf together, and furious Linda marches to Bradley's office and confronts him about giving the promotion to Donovan, pointing out that Donovan has only been with the company 6 months while she has worked there 7 years. And Bradley tells her he has seen her work and is impressed by her numbers but does not see her in an executive position because the role requires someone charming and well-liked who plays golf, and he casually points out she has something stuck in her teeth, and completely humiliated Linda starts to break down, and Bradley offers her a deal and asks her to join them on the Bangkok merger trip and says if she can solve the problems in Appendix D he might reconsider the promotion. And just then his fiancée Zuri walks in and Bradley mentions he has received complaints about Linda eating strong-smelling foods at her desk, and Linda grabs her things and walks out quietly, telling herself she is enough just the way she is. A few days later, Linda arrives at a private airfield ready for the Bangkok trip and tells Bradley she stayed up all night working on Appendix D and may have found a loophole, but he ignores her and orders everyone onto the plane. And during the flight, Donovan plays one of Linda's old audition tapes for the Survivor reality show where she talks about knowing 3 different ways to start a fire and loving nature. And Linda removes her earphones and hears everyone laughing at her, and shaking with anger she quickly deletes the file, and at that moment the plane suddenly hits heavy turbulence and moments later the cabin begins to depressurize and a hole tears open in one of the windows, and Linda offers her hand to Donovan to help him, but he demands her seat and tries to strangle her. And thinking fast, Linda grabs a fork and stabs him. And Donovan's tie then gets stuck in the door and he begs Linda to help him, and this time she ignores him, and seconds later the plane crashes into the sea. The next day Linda wakes up on a remote island after being washed ashore, and after hours of walking she comes across Bradley lying unconscious on the sand with a deep wound on his leg, and she sets up a small camp by gathering banana and coconut leaves and tying them together with vines to make a shelter. And she digs a hole and places banana leaves over coconut shells to catch rainwater during the coming storm. And the next morning Bradley finally wakes up and Linda brings him water. And he asks what happened to the others and Linda quietly tells him none of them survived, and he whispers Donovan's name and she shakes her head, and Bradley looks at her gratefully and thanks her for taking care of him, and Linda manages to start a fire and jumps up and down with excitement. And she brings Bradley some fish and insists he eat to regain his strength. The following morning Linda excitedly shows Bradley a conch shell and they can eat the snail inside, and Bradley asks how long she thinks they will be stuck there, and Linda says they are probably somewhere in the Gulf of Thailand and must have drifted several miles after the crash, and he dismisses her efforts and orders her to focus on getting them rescued instead of playing homemaker. And Linda fires back, pointing out that if it were not for her he would not even be alive, and when he tries to move he realizes he still cannot use his leg, and when she tries to help he snaps at her not to touch him, and annoyed Linda gathers her things and walks away, and a full day passes without her returning, and desperate Bradley begins shouting for water, and that night violent winds rip apart the shelter. The next day Linda returns and gives him water and reminds him they are not in the office anymore. And later she tells Bradley she found wild boar tracks and prepares a spear to hunt one, which would give them food for a week, and Bradley mockingly asks if she is actually going to hunt a boar, and Linda reminds him he should have known exactly what department she worked in, especially after claiming her work impressed him before giving the promotion away, and she heads into the forest, and when the boar charges toward her she runs and hides, and when it gets distracted she drives the spear straight into it. And that night they enjoy a proper meal together, and Bradley admits it tastes amazing, and Linda bursts into laughter and jokes that while he was sitting there like a lump on a log she was the one bringing home the bacon. The next day Linda discovers a clean freshwater source and takes a quick bath, and just as she is about to leave she notices a boat in the distance but stops herself from calling out and quietly mutters "not yet," and she returns to camp and tells Bradley she only found a new water source, and Bradley grows frustrated asking how they still have not been rescued after 2 weeks and demands they build a raft. And Linda shakes her head saying that is only a last resort since they already have food, water and shelter, and Bradley snaps saying this might be her kind of life but it is not his, and insists she has no right to tell him what to do because he is the CEO of a top 500 company, and Linda mocks him saying it is a company his father built, and furious Bradley fires her on the spot and limps away to build his own camp. But his shelter collapses almost immediately, and when he tries to start a fire it begins to rain, and the next morning Linda greets him and points out he spelled help as helle, and starving and exhausted he tries to eat an insect but immediately spits it out in disgust, and finally swallowing his pride he walks back to Linda and she smiles and casually points out he has something stuck in his teeth, and he apologizes for how he treated her both on the island and back at the office and admits that without someone like her the company would fall apart. That night they drink fermented fruit together and Bradley asks if she lives alone with only a bird for company, and Linda reveals she was actually married for 10 years, and when Bradley asks if she got divorced she quietly says her husband died, and she explains that whenever her husband drank she used to hide the car keys, but one day the fight got so bad that he did terrible things to her when she refused to give them to him, and in the end she handed them over and poured him his last drink, and she quietly admits she has never told this story to anyone before, and after a moment says maybe they should not even leave this island. One night while Linda adjusts her clothes Bradley secretly serves a meal he prepared himself, and when she tastes it she is genuinely impressed, but soon she starts feeling dizzy and collapses to the ground. And Bradley immediately grabs the raft he has secretly been building in the bushes and tries to escape alone, but the waves quickly overpower him and drag him underwater, and Linda rushes into the sea and pulls him back to shore while still vomiting from the poison he put in her food. The next day Bradley admits he tried to poison her and Linda calmly says she already knew because the food tasted bitter, and she points out it would take far more berries to actually kill a person, and then she gives him some octopus to eat, and when he asks she refuses saying her stomach still feels queasy, and then calmly reveals she fed him a blue-ringed octopus whose neurotoxins block nerve signals in the body. And Bradley suddenly realizes he cannot move, and Linda reassures him the toxin will only last a few hours but during that time he will not be able to move or feel anything, and she tells him no help is coming and he needs to accept he is no longer the boss and is now at the bottom of the food chain. For 2 days Bradley refuses to talk to her, and then Linda suddenly hears the sound of a boat engine and a woman named Zuri runs toward her and hugs her tightly and immediately asks if Bradley is alive, and Linda says he is, and Zuri explains that even after the official search was called off she hired her own boat and kept searching, and Linda asks if it is just the two of them and the boat captain confirms it is. And Linda leads them toward a high ridge saying it is a shortcut and asks them to walk ahead while she ties her laces, and sometime later Linda returns to camp alone and quietly lies down inside the shelter without saying a word. After some time Bradley tells her he saw fresh boat tracks nearby and they should check them out, but Linda simply says she is taking a sick day, and the next morning Bradley goes hunting and discovers something buried in the sand and realizes it is Zuri's diamond ring. And he runs back and confronts Linda demanding to know if she killed Zuri. And Linda calmly says Zuri slipped while she was trying to help her reach him, and Bradley snaps that it was just like her husband's death was an accident, and furious Linda reaches for the knife but Bradley has already taken it, and she runs into the forest and he chases her and a brutal struggle follows. Bradley escapes and runs into the part of the island Linda warned him never to enter and discovers a luxurious mansion belonging to a billionaire, and he rushes inside shouting for help but no one answers, and suddenly he hears Linda's voice through a speaker and she calmly reveals the truth, explaining that she found the mansion immediately after the crash and turned off the security, and she admits they could have been rescued a long time ago but she was not ready to leave yet, and she tells him all the food she had been bringing him was from the mansion, and she tells him that she was the one who pushed his fiancée off the cliff, and she appears in front of him holding a shotgun and tells him things could have turned out very differently between them, and Bradley admits he was a terrible person and says the island changed him and begs for a second chance, but Linda notices a showpiece is missing its curved horn and before she can react Bradley attacks her. And Linda grabs a golf club from the wall and Bradley pulls the shotgun trigger but it does not fire because it has no bullets, and Linda strikes him hard with the golf club and kills him. 1 year later Linda appears at a celebrity golf tournament as the new president of Preston Strategic Solutions, introduced as a real-life survivor and the only person rescued from the middle of the sea, and when asked how she managed to survive Linda calmly replies that the memories of her lost colleagues are what kept her going. And she reveals she is planning to write a self-help book because she wants people to understand one thing: no help is coming, so you better start saving yourself. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a video like this.